Hi everyone, welcome back to Numinosophy Academy, where we explore spirituality, religion, and the beliefs that motivate us to live life in the way that we do. If that interests you, then please do subscribe to my channel. So, today we're back on the Saints Unscripted Mormon YouTube channel, ready to react to another one of their videos. That reminds me, actually, I noticed in the comment section of one of my videos, or it might have been on Reddit, someone referred to me or my channel as anti-Mormon, which I find a bizarre accusation. I'm not Mormon, I've never been Mormon, and I'm just on here giving my honest feedback, my honest reaction to these videos that I watch. So for that to be construed as anti, bit strange. But anyway, so the title of today's video, which we'll get straight into, is A Millennial's Conversion from Catholic to Mormon. And as always, if you could help me out by hitting the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and we will begin.
Well, thanks for having me back. I was on the convert episode, the what's it like to be a new convert. So that was a fun one, so I'm happy to be back.
Yes.
But I guess I'll just jump into this. So I was raised Catholic, very Catholic. I believe we're called traditional Roman Catholics. They still speak Latin and wear black robes in church, and they believe that the purpose for life is suffering.
It's interesting to frame the conversation in this way. It's, again, very adversarial. It kind of highlights how strange that he's perceiving them to be, speaking in Latin. They don't really speak in Latin. The Roman Mass traditionally may be conducted in Latin. That's slightly different to saying they speak in Latin. And also their purpose being that of suffering. Yeah, I'm not too convinced by that.
And I was raised that way. It got really depressing. I got tired of it when I was about 16 years old. And so I stopped going to church, and I actually stopped believing in God for about 2 years. And that was kind of a low point in my life. It got to a point where my dad was telling me all the time how much I had failed God and how I was going to go to hell for that, which is not fun to hear from your dad,
Yeah, you certainly cannot underestimate just how oppressive and life-denying extreme religiosity can be. It can very much take a toll on people spiritually, emotionally.
But there was one night, I was about 18 by this point. This was toward the very end of it all, where my dad just decided he had enough of all this, and he just went off on me again, telling me how worthless I was and how I was a failure to God, and again, how I was going to go to hell and just all this fun stuff. And after 2 years of it, I was kind of done. And it got to me. It really got to me after all that.
So that sounds horrible. The danger, though, is I wouldn't want to construe the emotional abuse wrought upon someone by a Roman Catholic as being indicative of what Roman Catholicism is, which when you're experiencing it, it's very difficult to make that distinction. But now, reflectively looking back on this, it's just, you need to hold those kind of differently.
And I decided that night that I was going to take my own life. And so I went down into my room to do that. And I got this really distinct feeling. I had no idea at the time what it was or why it was happening, but it was like, hey, Jimmy, you should pray one more time. It's kind of, what's the worst thing that could happen? If God's there, he'll hear you and maybe he'll answer. And if he's not there, then whatever. And so I was like, okay. So I prayed. And at this point, it had been about 1.5 years since I'd heard from anybody. And I said a pretty irreverent prayer. And I just asked God to give me some kind of a sign because I need to know if he was real. I asked him to have someone just reach out to me. And after the prayer, I realized it was 2:30 in the morning and that nothing was probably going to happen. But not even 30 seconds after that, my phone just kind of goes off. And it's this guy who I played baseball with in middle school. So it had been like 5 years or thereabouts since I'd heard from him, and all of a sudden at 2:30 in the morning, he's just like, "Hey, Jimmy, we should hang out tomorrow." So that was really eye-opening. I was like, okay, you know, God's real. And
So I do struggle with these coincidences that you're construing miraculously type stories. I think it's problematic. I mean, what about all those people throughout the world that are suffering, that are calling upon God, that do not have the friend that calls them up? And what about all those other nights in which things got out of hand and he went to his room and prayed for some kind of intervention and it didn't come? But I understand why, you know, we want to mythologize these types of moments in our lives, because it feels like, in retrospect, that hope and a future is kind of breaks into what we are experiencing as very dark and bleak. So I very much, I appreciate why people would think about it in those terms.
so obviously I had to do something about that. And another interesting thing, I'm from Georgia. And what I decided to do about it was start looking at churches. And there's a lot of churches in Georgia. And it's just so hard to look at them all. You know?
Yeah.
It's all like the First Baptist Church and the Second Baptist Church and, you know, whatever other kinds of churches.
No, we actually were First Baptist Church. No. We're the first ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the same thing where they all think the other ones are wrong and they're right, you know. And so yeah, that took about 2 years.
Wow.
To look through all the churches, and never once did it occur to me to look at the LDS Church, because
that is an interesting comment, that they all think they're right, because I know that very much plays into LDS thinking, because that's what motivated Joseph Smith's first vision, his desire to determine once and for all which denomination is the one that holds the truth. And of course, God or Jesus tells him that none of them do. I think, though, it is a bit of a false characterization, especially at the more liberal end of Christianity. There aren't, people within those denominations self-assured in the fact that they belong to the right one. People don't really think about that until you get, into very conservative types of spirituality.
As Catholics just don't like Mormons. And so I was just kind of stubborn that way. I was like, yeah, they're weird. So I never went and looked, but I eventually just kind of ran out of options. Like, there's no more churches.
Did just none of them stick out to you, or how did
Yeah, all of them I went to, I was just kind of like, okay. So I went to church today. And yeah, so I reached out to my friend who I'd grown up with. And he got really excited for some reason. He was like, yeah, let's meet up and talk about this. And so we meet up and we go to get lunch, and he's like, so I'm a Mormon and you should go to church with me this week. My parents are talking in church. And I was like, slow down, you're talking in church? That's really cool. It's a big deal. It's not. I've done it about 10 times now, but I thought it was a big deal. So I went to church with them that week. I had to sneak out of my house because I knew my parents weren't going to be okay with it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I had to.
How'd you do it?
I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 5:30 in the morning. Get my church clothes together. Sneak out the back door. Go slow enough to where the motion-activated lights didn't go off, because they would have gone right into my parents' window. And so I had to be careful with
That's
that.
devotion. We should all try that hard to go to church every week.
So I go load my clothes into the car, sneak back inside, go shower and stuff, come up with some reason that I'm up at 6 in the morning at this point to tell my parents, like, yeah, I'm going to help someone move at 6 in the morning on a Sunday. And so, church didn't start till 9.
It doesn't really make sense with his prior comment saying that he was trying out all these different churches. They must know then he was going to church every Sunday if he was trying out lots of different churches.
By the way, so I got up at 5:30 to go to 9 a.m. church, but it was totally worth it. So I go there and I hear my friend's parents speak, and I still think it's huge. I go talk to them afterwards, like, like they're a big deal and stuff. Like, well, that was cool. Like, and I remember very clearly feeling just something I hadn't in any of the other churches. Like this is something different. Like this is great. Like I want to come back here. And after that, they took me back to their house to have lunch with them, and they just so happened to have the missionaries over. And they just so happened to have a message for me.
They trick you into being a Mormon lunch.
Right, yeah. And so they taught me about the plan of salvation, which it really resonated with me because the Catholics they don't have any kinds of a concept of a premortal existence like the LDS Church does. And it was something that had always bugged me. Like, if we didn't come from anywhere, then why are we here?
I wonder if it did always bug him. I would hazard a guess that the question had probably never occurred to him until it was presented to him by the Mormon missionaries. If you can frame the question, it's very easy to win the debate. It's, a clever marketing ploy. If you can get that question under people's skin and then provide an answer, provide a product which satisfies that question, then it suggests that there's a truth there. There's a truth in that religion. It's a little bit of a trick though, isn't it?
Like, if we're just here to suffer, it almost makes God look evil, I think. So just knowing that we came from somewhere was so huge to me, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. And so I wanted to go back and have the other lessons and stuff. I didn't know how it worked at that point. They were just like, we have more messages. And I was like, cool. So all these priests start calling me. They tell me all this stuff about how, like, you're wrong, Jimmy. And I'm just like, okay, because my bishop told me not to argue with them. It's just not even worth it most of the time.
Wait. Can you... The priest told you something, like, why Mormonism can't be true?
Yes.
Can you relay that just because
There are a lot of them, but I believe the one Quaker is referring to is...
Wait, I'm so intrigued. Spit it out.
They sent me this article, and it's like 7 pages long, about one verse in the Book of Ether, where there's a passing mention of bees. And they're very convinced that that's why the Book of Mormon is wrong, because it happened before the Spanish brought bees to America, they say. And so that's why our church is wrong. And
Yeah, okay, but there's a lot of things in the Book of Mormon that shouldn't be there because they hadn't been invented yet or they hadn't yet been brought to America. So I guess bees is one of them. I think a couple more horses and steel, I think is another one. There's a list. And of course, Mormons then have to come up with ways of explaining why that is the way it is. It's a translation issue. Maybe this thing did get there in some small way, but it died out, or, ways of bending over backwards to make the Book of Mormon true.
And so
because there are no bees.
Because there are no bees. And so,
Oh, God.
and I mean, let's just say for a second there are, like, it mentions unicorns in the Bible, right? But they're okay with that, but yeah, that was pretty entertaining. I always go to FHE like, hey guys, and so, but now the arguing, it lasted for months. Arguing with my dad all the time, it was horrible. I'm not saying I enjoyed the arguing, but like, it was more than I had really interacted with my dad in a long time, and it was suddenly just gone. And we had a bad relationship, like I said, and so it's something that I regret is that we didn't get to fix that afterwards. So just keep going with it. If you know it's true, then you know it's true. Don't give up on what you believe, but don't give up on them either.
It's a very difficult position to be in, an attempt to have an open dialogue. If you know it's true, then you know it's true. If you know you're certain, then there's no real discussion to be had. You can't really hear the other person, because it's only ever a case of trying to convince the other person of your own rightness. Not really a basis for discussion.
Because eventually they'll come around, and all of it will have just been even more worth it. I mean, even if they don't join the church with you, they'll see how happy you are, and they'll be happy for you about all of it. I mean, if anyone's upset that you're living the way you do when you're a Mormon, like, that's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
what do they want? You know? And so, but just keep going at it. Like I said, keep doing what you know is right, and eventually people will see that. And I mean, you're gonna be happy the whole time. Honestly, like, you're gonna see all these blessings that come from everything. I mean, everything that you go through, it's gonna have a purpose all of a sudden. It's something that I've noticed in my life. Like, every hard thing that I've ever been through, I can tell you now why I went through it.
I think all I'd want to emphasize is there's a sense here of arrival. I've arrived at what I know the truth to be. And that's very sad, I think. And I would hope that that's not really true. I mean, all these people are very young and very certain. And I would hope openness, dialogue, further inquiry would open doors once again for them to appreciate the breadth of the human experience.
It's something you'll be able to eventually learn to discern, is, like Quake, you said, when it's the spirit and God's not lying to you, but Satan will lie to you. He doesn't want you to be happy. He doesn't want you to do what's right. He wants to bring you as far from God as he possibly can, and he's going to come for you in moments like these. And I mean, it even happened to Joseph Smith in the first vision. Before Christ came, Satan came. But when you learn to be able to tell the difference, the presence of God will always cast out Satan.
Again, it's a very adversarial way of thinking. The message which is trying to trip you up being Satan and being evil, everything which is outside of the truth, outside of the church, outside of your Mormon testimony, and whereas everything within it is good. You know, there's a lot of truth and a lot to know and understand outside the confines of the religious space that you occupy.
I'd just like to share my testimony that I know that this is the true church of Jesus Christ restored to the earth, that Joseph Smith is a prophet, and that the Book of Mormon is the Word of God, that every word of it is true, that if you study out of that book every day, you will never be led astray.
Thanks again so much for coming on.
Of course,
We
thanks for
loved
having
hearing
me.
your story. It's really powerful.
I'm glad to do it. I'm so happy to be here. Be sure to subscribe to Three Mormons on YouTube, follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Be sure to hit the
Okay, well, thanks everyone. There's another reacting to Saints Unscripted. Not a lot to react to really in that video, because a lot of that is, his personal experience, and it's very difficult to react either negatively or positively to personal experience. It's really where there's what I would perceive as logical inconsistencies where I want to kind of push back. But anyway, as always, I jump on that bandwagon there at the end. Please do like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.